So I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes. We'll have a discussion for around 10 minutes. And if we can end sooner, we will, to save everyone a little bit of time. But I'd like you to think of this as a kind of conversation about new technology and how it can be applied to your business. So we've got like 4 sections we're going to talk through. The first, I'm going to introduce myself, why I'm talking about this topic. Then I'm going to share the big idea. And then we'll explore some situations where AI tools can be useful. And then we'll wrap up with a few key takeaways. So I'll just start with a little introduction to myself. I was born in Washington, D.C. I've spent my life between the U.S. and Europe. So currently I'm talking to you from Lucerne, Switzerland, which is where I live. And I also spend a lot of time in Ibiza as well. So those are the 2 places where I spend most of my time, but I'm back and forth between Europe and North America. When I was 22 years old, in 1999, I started an internet company back in the early days of the internet to help governments go online, e-government company. And 2 years later, I sold it to a larger company in the space. And I did that just before the dot-com bubble burst. So there was a bit of luck involved in that one. After that, I did an MBA in the US. From there, I started in a PhD program. I was taking a course in statistics, and I had an idea for a new financial technology company. I left the PhD program to start the business, and in less than a year, it was worth $10 million. So a great kind of start again in the startup world. So since then, I've started or bought controlling interests in around 30 different companies over the last 20 years. And since 2015, I've primarily invested in real world applications of artificial intelligence, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So here's the big idea. AI has really been overhyped since the beginning. And the beginning, you can kind of trace back to 1955. That's when a group of 4 or 5 professors at Dartmouth decided that they wanted to spend the summer at the beach, and they got some grant money to develop machines that could learn. So they were going to start in June, and they were going to finish in September with computers that could learn. Well, spoiler alert, it didn't happen. And it was, I think, typical of AI that the first big claim was one that just didn't work at all. Even today, in my experience in the space, AI is still more art than science. It's useful for very specific applications. It's a big waste of time and money for most areas of business today. And we'll see that as we continue here in the talk. So from an e-commerce perspective, what that means is there's a lot of money to be made, and there's a lot of money to be lost. So it's high risk, it's high reward. So we're going to talk about where it works and why, and on areas where it does not work at all, where it's just a big graveyard. I'm not going to, in today's talk, discuss the singularity. I'm not going to talk about artificial general intelligence, just tools that work today to help you compete in e-commerce. So the first thing I'd like to do is give you a kind of framework for why AI can be useful at all. And I'm going to do that dressed up as a fighter pilot. So here are my fighter pilot sunglasses, and here's my fighter pilot silk scarf. And one of the interesting things about AI is that it's there to help you gather information more quickly, take decisions more quickly, and take better decisions regularly. And it's something that was so important for fighter pilots that even the act of kind of moving your head around, which would chafe your neck in a jacket like this, which would prevent someone from rolling their head around to see all of the different planes that were around that were trying to kill them. Even something like that could mean the difference between life and death. So as you're up and you're trying to see what's happening in my environment, what's a threat, what's an opportunity, reducing friction, actual physical friction, something that we talk a lot about in terms of like end user experience and things like that, but actually reducing that friction physically for these pilots was the difference between life and death. So what they were trying to do, and what the Air Force now teaches fighter pilots to do, is to think in terms of a loop, to think in terms of data, so moving your head around to figure out what's going on, analysis, analyzing, okay, there's an enemy plane and it's coming from here and it's going there, and if I go this way, then taking a decision, okay, I'm going to go left or I'm going to go right, and then actually taking the action, data, decision, analysis, data, action, produces more data. So I've gone right, now I'm in a new environment, that produces more data. And with that data, I'm going to do another analysis, another decision, and take another action. So anything that we can do to reduce that friction and to make that faster and better in that process is going to improve our ability to survive, to thrive, and to compete in our environment. So artificial intelligence is really a way of automating that process, of building machines that can take in information, learn, take a decision, take action, produce more data, and learn from it. So let's take it out of the fighter pilot, Air Force environment, and let's bring it into e-commerce. So let's pretend, and I don't think this will be a stretch for most of the people on the call, but let's pretend that we run an e-commerce company. And let's kind of talk through the different roles. We either run it or we're part of the team, doesn't really matter. But let's talk through the different roles that are essential for e-commerce and what AI tools are available in each of those roles today. So the first thing to think about when we're looking at whether an AI tool will be useful or not is what are the conditions that exist currently in that department or that role, what that person is responsible for doing. So is there a lot of data? AI needs a lot of data. In the future, it's likely that it'll need less. The algorithms are advancing, the tools are advancing, but currently AI needs a lot of data to be effective. So if you're in a data poor environment, that's a good reason to look elsewhere and to not invest in AI tools. The second criteria is variability. AI is designed to see changing patterns. So this is a kind of sign of intelligence. If you can identify a pattern, you would have, if you can recognize patterns, you would have, let's say, a higher degree of intelligence. But if the pattern keeps repeating itself in the same way and it doesn't change, you can solve it once and you're done. You don't need to have a machine and you don't need to have software that can recognize changes and adapt to them. Then it has to be repetitive. Is this a problem that you're going to see again and again and again, or is it a one-off? If it's a one-off, AI isn't the right tool. The last condition that's necessary is that there's a big impact. So that by solving the problem, you can make a significant impact on the revenue of the company. If it's a small impact, the amount of time and effort, money that has to go into building an AI will make it a negative return on investment. So it's very important that you meet all of those criteria right out of the gate. And let me explain some kind of conditions where it just doesn't work at all. So if it's something that requires a lot of heart and a lot of human connection, AI is not the right tool today. If it's something that's really rare or unique that you never will expect to see again, it's also not the right tool. So you should look elsewhere. AI really works best when it can generate more revenue by deciding which experience each one of your shoppers, which experience to give a shopper for an individual product at an individual moment. So a way to think about this is if it's a kind of technical thing, something that maybe your grandfather or your father did, then maybe AI has a shot. But if it's something that your grandmother or mother did, and here I'm using very standard kind of gender roles, so forgive me for that, that required a lot of heart, then AI is not a good fit. So here in the audience today, we have a lot of people involved in all areas of e-commerce, from hard goods to digital products, from one-off sales to subscriptions, to B2C, to B2B. We're going to start out with an example of the first e-commerce transaction. And I'd first like to throw it out to the audience and see if anybody knows when the first transaction happened, what was sold, and who was the seller and who was the buyer. So I'm going to see if I can get this in our chats. Dana, maybe you can give me a hand here. So the first e-commerce transaction, what year was it? Who was the buyer? Who was the seller? And what was the product?
Okay, so does anyone know the answer to that question? We got anyone? Let's see here. Well, Clay, why don't you go ahead and tip us off? If we, oh, here we go. Oh, didn't quite show the offer. Yeah, it works here. Nope.
No?
No, we don't have it yet.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to give it to you. So assuming that you're in e-commerce, this is an important fact to know, right? When did it all start? It started in 1972, so way, way early. It was on ARPANET, which of course was the government's early version of the internet in the US. And it was a transaction between Stanford's Artificial Intelligence Lab and MIT. And the product that was sold was cannabis.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Relevant to today's environment that we're in. Of course, a hot topic for a lot of people. Exactly.
Smoking, burning topic. So yeah, that was the first transaction. So let's talk, let's kind of bring it forward today using that example. So imagine that you're selling a product, weed or whatever else it is, and there's and we're gonna kind of go through the different departments within an e-commerce company that are involved in making it work and making it a success. So let's start with product. So these guys were growing weed. Not many applications for artificial intelligence in cannabis. It's something that's kind of from time immemorial. You have light, you have water, you have the plants, and it sort of grows on its own with the farmer kind of tending it. There are specific applications for artificial intelligence in growing a plant or in creating a product, but it's not one of the better areas to invest your time in today. So with our e-commerce applications for artificial intelligence, we're just going to assume that the product was developed and the product meets a need, and we're going to move on to kind of other areas. So if there can be kind of systems for developing products, and you can have algorithms, and I'll just kind of highlight the difference between an algorithm and artificial intelligence now. So an algorithm is like a recipe in a kitchen. You would have a set of ingredients, you would have a set of steps that you follow in a certain order, and that produces, let's say, a meal. So that would be an algorithm. A recipe is an algorithm. Artificial intelligence would then close that loop. So when I was wearing the sunglasses and the silk scarf, every time that pilot would fly through, okay, I've got data, I've analyzed it, I've taken a decision, that I've taken action, that then produces new data, which the person acts on and runs that loop again. So if you had artificial intelligence at the product level, so with a recipe, the AI would actually be tasting or gathering data on the taste, the temperature, the texture, all the different things that come together, caloric content, nutrition, all of that comes together in a meal, and then rewriting the recipe. So that's the difference between an algorithm and an AI. The AI is learning and adapting the steps. So I think at the product stage, not terribly useful. Let's kind of go a level up. Product management. So deciding which products you want to sell. There, an AI can take data from a content management system, from a product management system. It can integrate with payment systems. You can have cost data, and you can figure out which products are more likely to sell, and you can get recommendations from an AI in a product management system or content management system for which types of content or products it makes sense to invest in more. So let's use our criteria. Data, this looks good. There's a lot of data, a lot of product costs that are available. Variability, you're always adding new items, retiring certain items. So that's good. Repetitive, it's a constant data stream. So every day you're getting new information on which products are working and which aren't. And then impact. So this is perhaps where it would falter, where you could put the work in, but maybe the return wouldn't be positive. It's not clear to me whether this would be an interesting area to explore for AI in that regard. Would it be positive ROI or not? I think if you had a cloud solution that you could test very cheaply, perhaps it would be interesting. Let's move to another area of e-commerce, software development. So in software development, it's been a dream for many years to have software that could write itself, could code itself. Certainly, technical resources are a scarcity for almost anyone in e-commerce. This is not something that AI can do today. There's an interesting professor named Daniel Koenig from Oxford, who has a new company called Diff Blue. They're primarily focused on automating the testing aspect of writing software, but I think we're years away from software that can write itself. Copywriting, you're describing a product, you're describing your company, you're putting information out there so that people can understand what it is that you're selling and see if it's a good fit for them. GPT-3 is a new AI tool that was released in July 2020 by OpenAI. And with a few prompts, it's able to produce writing, which is in many cases indistinguishable from human writing. So that's an interesting tool for you to use for copywriting. It can save you time and effort there. So let's use our kind of criteria here. So data, GPT-3 uses billions of words. I think all of Wikipedia was used as training data for GPT-3. Variability, you need text for product descriptions for this one, for that one, for all of these different applications. So it's useful for that. Repetitive. So I just got a 5-minute warning. So repetitive, yes, you need to do it over and over again. And impact can save you a lot of time and a lot of costs. Customer support, you have chat bots that can read through your customer support training information. I think this is a good fit for AI. It enables you to cheaply be available for customers all the time and let them interact with you in a very simple way, so 24/7. Recommendation engines. This is what Netflix uses to suggest the next show to you. So they're gathering data on your viewing habits, which content have you viewed, for how long. And so it learns about you, it tests an idea. Hey, maybe he'll like this, maybe she'll like that, and learns from that process. Meets our criteria. Lots of data available on use if you can connect it with your content management system. And the other ones check out as well, as long as it's fairly inexpensive. Selling to foreign markets, translation is a big issue. There's a company called DeepL, the letter L.com, which is doing translation work, which is just spectacular. So better than Google and everybody else out there. As only 5% of the population speaks English as a first language. If you're writing in English, you're asking people to put in an extra effort to understand your product and to go through your sales flow. So having great translation is is a very important thing to do, and AI is doing it better and cheaper than ever. Sales and marketing. So setting the price, determining your unique selling points, all of these things that are testable, and AI can test those things and then figure out for each shopper, for each product at each moment, what is the best way to present the product and what is the best price to use. Obviously, that data has to be linked together with conversion data and lifetime value data to give you a revenue per click and help you figure out the right price for each one. It's something that we've been doing at Vendo for 5 years. You have a number of other things which AI would be a great fit for. So offers, one of the questions that we get a lot is, should I offer a trial or not? And with an AI, you don't need to answer that question directly and universally for the whole world. You can pick for each shopper, product, and moment, whether it's profitable to offer that or not. Same goes for discounts, advertising other products, cross sales, one clicks, and offers to X members. All of these things could be usefully explored with AI. On the payment section, you have payment forms. We've been choosing the right payment form for each shopper, product, and moment for the last year, and we've maintained above a 2% increase in conversion for our merchants. Payment methods, should I add crypto, should I not? For each shopper, product, and moment, an AI could be able to answer that question. Risk, should I let a customer buy or not? Perfect for AI. Since 2015, we've been fully AI on our risk. So the last role that I'd like to explore is executive. And I think with the executive function in an e-commerce company, you're really looking at what are the right things that we need to get done. It's vision, it's people. And I think that AI is not particularly useful for that role, not such a great fit. So just to wrap up, what are the must-haves for an AI tool? You've got to have a lot of data. You have to have variability, so changing patterns. It has to be a problem that you'll be solving again and again. And there has to be an important impact as well. And then when you invest in AI, the money's going towards hiring experts, giving them clear goals, giving them data, or you're purchasing from a third party. You'll need to also set up a cloud system, AI libraries. So 3 kind of final takeaways. If you're looking at AI and it meets these criteria, start with a simple, clear problem that fits the criteria. 80% of the work is going to be getting clean data to work with. And then make sure you have a large addressable market so you can have a significant impact. So that's an overview of AI tools for e-commerce. And Dana, I'm going to throw it back to you now.
All right, Clay, thank you so much for your presentation today and for joining us. We're going to start off, we're going to go to Chloe, who is in the chat. And this was obviously a topic that's really relevant to today's space, but COVID. Their question, as they were going on in the chat, was how long does it take to understand the new behaviors of consumers who are now in a new environment based on the pandemic that we're in? So how long would it take to see how that data changes, in your opinion? Because we've been in this now for about, what, 10 months?
Yeah, hey, Chloe, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. At Vendo, we've been doing more or less monthly, bi-monthly kind of COVID updates for our clients, where we've been tracking this data, and we've been making a lot of predictions that were wrong. So what we expected it to end sooner than it did. We also thought that we weren't seeing a kind of consistent rise. We thought surely this is going to run out. People are going to run out of money. They can't keep spending at a 20 to 30% increase, which is what we've been seeing. And it stayed steady ever since. So you're right, Dana, you're talking 10 months of a pretty consistent result. I just didn't see it really at the beginning, but it hasn't changed that much. So
do you feel like now you have enough data as a company to start making some decisions based on the data that you've collected, the ones that you were making incorrectly 6 months ago? Do you have enough now?
Yeah, so we weren't making incorrect decisions, really. What we were doing was we were forecasting that it would end.
Yes.
And it didn't. We were like, we can't maintain 20 to 30% increase, and it did. So yeah, I think you can bet on it now. I mean, now we're entering a new phase, right?
Yeah.
Vaccines. So we'll see.
Clay, because we don't have a lot of time here, I just wanted to get that translation tool you mentioned. Can you repeat that one more time for our guests that are with us today?
Yeah, it's DeepL, the letter L, .com. So I don't think that was a very expensive URL to buy.
And of course, Clay, if people want to get in touch with you after the show, what's the best way for them to do so?
So go to vendoservices.com and let's start a conversation about how the tools that we're building can help you reach your potential and compete and thrive.
Fantastic. Well, Clay, thank you so much for your time today and the knowledge you imparted on all of us. It was a pleasure, and we hope to see you soon. For everyone watching online, we'll now take a 5-minute recess before seeing you back here at the Certus Finance FinTech stage for our next scheduled presenter.
Dana, a pleasure. Thank you.